when he saw what we were doing, and he had brought a lot of live bait on that trip. He literally brought baby bunker. His son threw a cast net and got all this great live bait that they kept alive, and it did not do crap against the gulp.
Hello and welcome back to the Fat Dad Fishing Show. I'm your host, Rich Natoli, joined live tonight with Captain John Halkias. And before I jump into that, I got to ask, are we actually live? Because it's telling me we're not, but I believe we are. So good old YouTube. Okay, it looks like we have a yes from James Flynn. Thanks for joining in, James. I see my brother in there. Bowtie Killer, SD0753. And Randy Brown from Salt Strong Days. Good to see you guys in there. We're going to hit this a little bit different than we typically do. We're not going to go into like all the education stuff. This is all about, look, Fluke's opening. It's open in some states already. In some states it never closes. I think Delaware is one of those where we have a lot of viewers, but it's going to open. It is rolling into Fluke season. So let's talk about it. Let's have a little bit of fun for half an hour or so. And let's get ready for what, for me, is my favorite time of the year is fluke fishing. So I'm excited to get back at it. Before we jump into that, we're going to go through the sponsors as usual. Great Bay Outfitters, the top sponsor, the original sponsor of this show. Paul and the team at Great Bay Outfitters is the place to go on Radio Road in Tuckerton, New Jersey, if you want anything to do with kayak fishing at all. And I would say it doesn't even have to be kayak fishing. Kayaking. You want to go into Great Bay Outfitters. They just announced 3 hours ago they're back to their summer hours. So on May 1st, so that's what, Friday, they go back to their summer hours, so 9 to 3, and then on weekends 10 to 3, or no, what is it, 10 to 3 on weekdays. Okay, 10 to 3 on weekdays, and then the weekends 9 to 3. And just so that you know, that is the place you want to go if you're thinking about buying a kayak, because you get to test it on the water. He's got the models in that you want to try, and that is the single most important thing to do is to test a kayak yourself. Don't take whoever's word for it that they have the best kayak. The thing is, everybody thinks they have the best. And that's, maybe it's a defense mechanism because they have to justify the cost that they just put into it. But go down there, try it out. They're back to summer hours starting on Friday. Then we have Quad State Tune, Kevin Driscoll. If you own a Toyota truck, so we're talking Tacoma, Tundra, 4Runner, Lexus, 460 and 470. These are the engine tunes that will get you more performance out of the engine, improved throttle response, improved torque, better horsepower, smoother transitions when you're on the highway. If you're towing a boat, this is what you want if you have a Toyota. When you talk to Kevin, his number is 484-633-5975. If you have a model or a year that he does not think you're going to get the benefit out of it, he will tell you that. So he's not just going to sell you just because you have a Toyota. He's going to talk to you about what you can expect, and you can make a good decision there. And then the last one is me, Rich Natoli, Natoli Real Estate, soon to be expanding. But as of right now, it's me, the solo show in southeastern Pennsylvania, primarily residential real estate. I appreciate each and every one of you that has reached out to me and sent referrals or done business directly with me. It is how I pay my bills. It is greatly appreciated. I don't know if you guys know, but this is a really, really tough real estate market. We're bouncing at the bottom, the basement of volume. And it's I got to say, it's the Fat Dad Fishing crew that has helped me to weather some of these storms. So yeah, if you have anything, reach out to me. My number is 267-270-1145. And as I do that, I'm going to silence my phone just in case. But yeah, so those are the sponsors. Please support them as they support this show. And with that, I'm going to bring John on screen. John, welcome back. It's good to see you.
What's up, Rich?
I'm excited. I am really, really excited for a full season of Fluke this year.
So I'm not yet excited.
No, I know.
We did like literally 5 minutes of prep before this, trading anecdotes about opening day. It used to be exciting for me here in Eastern Long Island. I keep my boat. I have for 27th year, I think now, in one of what used to be the prime fluking grounds in New York in May. And we would actually catch fluke in April. I remember one year it opened April 17th. and we were bailing Fluke, Peconic Bay.
Yeah.
And that fishery has completely almost died. And it more excited about bass right now than Fluke, but I know we're going to talk about Fluke today, not bass, not tog, not anything else. But it's interesting how the world works. If we had this conversation 10 years ago, I would have been way more excited, but still excited that the season's finally starting. To me, it signifies the start of spring, and some of our ocean runs and fishing Montauk, Rhode Island, things like that, that we're a little closer to that.
Yeah, I think for me, that's a big part of it. It's, a lot of people say the summer starts at Memorial Day. For me, the summer starts when Fluke opens. It's not summer technically, but to me, that's where I shift into summer mode. I just, I'm ready to be on the kayak. I'm ready to be on a boat or on a sod bank or on a beach, just getting my feet wet and getting the line wet and hopefully pulling some fish in. And I just love stalking Fluke in the backwaters. It's an obsession. People say, if you had a boat, you wouldn't agree. Well, I had a boat for a long time and kayaks, and I ended up fishing out of the kayak more than the boat because I just love, especially the South Jersey area, where I could get back in the sod banks and just kind of disappear and just stalk these fish that, they can be elusive at this time of year, and you were saying before we came on that you're a little nervous about how this is going to start and whether it's going to be a good start or a slow start.
Oh, I'm positive it's going to be a slow start. And I just echoing what you said about the sod banks, I a couple of years ago, I hooked up with Roger A from Cooking and Fishing, and he introduced me, and actually before him, one of my really good clients, Ernesto, we went on a party boat out of Mauritius Bay called the Rosie, and we had a phenomenal day where everyone else was using like a lighter version, but like a 1 ounce, 1.5 ounce bucktail and a teaser. And he was just dropping these little 1/4 ounce, 1/2 ounce jig heads with the gulp jerk shads. And he outfished the whole boat. And then I started doing it, and I limited, and I caught up a big fish, and I was like, holy crap. And then everybody, when I put the video out, everybody in the comments pointed to Roger, and I looked up his channel. I actually become very good friends with him. And this is a long-winded way of saying I'm really going to try what you're trying in my local waters. Granted, it's not the same bottom. It's a much deeper bay, but we do have some spots that I think are kind of, well, not a mirror of the sod banks you describe in the marshes off Jersey. I think I have a chance to make it work, but time will tell.
Yeah, and I think it comes down to structure, right? And the sod banks are great because there's so much variation to structure in such a small area, right? You could be in a 1 mile area and have 10,000 different bits of structure on the bottom, and you have different currents coming out of different creeks, coming over different waters, over different bottoms. And that, to me, it just kind of condenses it, right? But Peconic Bay, you do have those types of structures. It's just different, and it's deeper, much deeper, as you told me, 80 feet in some places.
Yeah, 80 feet close to shore.
To shore.
There's deeper parts of the bay, but I mentioned to you when I have clients from Jersey, and we're leaving Peconic Bay, and I follow a channel that often you're 40, 50 feet from shore. And the guy next to me might say, "It's not really 80 feet here, is it?" I go, "Yeah." And you can literally throw a rock to shore.
That's crazy. I guess we have that. We only get that really in the inlets and the bridges right near the inlets where we get, and not 80 feet. I think the deepest that I fish is maybe, I think there's an area in Absecon Inlet. It gets down to around 50, and also down in Hereford Inlet, it gets down to about 50. So it goes from about 8 or 9 feet down to 50 pretty quick. But those are in the inlet. In the backwaters, I have found actually, I didn't find it. I was shown a hole that went down to 60 feet, but it's not 60 feet anymore. It's kind of filled in as the sands moved. And I never caught anything out of that hole, though. But yeah, I think the one thing that would be interesting when you try those early in the season is to take a look at what the depth does and as compared to the water temperatures, right? Because sometimes those deeper areas have the more consistent water temperatures and can be more comfortable. So maybe that'll help. I know it helps
Yeah.
with striped bass. They'll just kind of sit under that thermocline. You'll definitely have a thermocline at 80 feet.
Yeah. Well, to be clear, most of the bay is 25 to 50 feet. But
Yeah.
there are ledges like that. The 80 was just one spot that we drive through. Yeah, I can tell you right now, the water temp's about, when I went out a couple days ago, I went out with Skinner. We tried for tog. We have the April tog season, and we
Yeah.
tried for bass. The water temp was 49 and a half, but that's on top of the water.
Right.
It's been brutally cold here. Today was a beautiful day, but it's been in the 30s every morning. I think when he and I went out, it was 39 when I left my house to drive to the boat. And, that water temp is actually down a degree from about 10 days before that when I had tried also. So that deeper water for Fluke is going to be cooler. There's no squid have shown up yet by us.
Gotcha.
They start showing up around now. No bass have really shown up, despite I know Skinner put out a couple videos or one video showing some bass, but the water temps really have to improve.
Yeah.
I think for us to get the bait in that's needed for the Fluke to follow the bait.
It's interesting to me. You said that you don't have like the bass in, but I'm seeing, guys texting me, emailing, and then I'm seeing on social media, 40, 50 inches in the backwaters.
That's west of us.
That's west of you?
Yeah.
So they're in behind you now. They're not.
Yeah.
Okay.
They'll be here. I'm not worried about the bass. They
haven't made the turn.
Yeah. The bass we get in Peconic Bay, I'm pretty sure come through Shinnecock Inlet.
Gotcha.
And make their way east from there. So, and that's historically where the Fluke came from too. And we did not talk about this, but the precipitous decline in Fluke we've seen in Peconic Bay directly translates with the commercial fishing that was discovered off the continental shelf, right off Shinnecock. Now you have commercial boats there all winter in the deep water hammering the big Fluke.
Yep.
If you look on social media, Instagram all winter showing these draggers, with 13, 14, 15 pound Fluke. Those are all the Fluke that used to come in through Shinnecock first and then come into Peconic Bay. And I don't think it's a coincidence that fishery was discovered and now, our bay is suffering. And it's not meant to be an indictment on commercial fishing. I'm technically a commercial fisherman, right? As a charter captain. And they serve a purpose and it's legal. They're not doing anything illegal. It's just explaining my opinion why why we've seen fewer spring Fluke than we historically had.
Right. Well, look, anything that you do, anything anybody does is going to affect everybody else. And when you have those, I've seen those, just the sheer volume of big fish getting pulled out by these things. It's amazing. And yeah, they're not going to make it back into the backwaters when they come in the spring because they're never going to make it there. They're never going to make it to the spring. So it does make sense to me. I'll say one thing, as far as the advantage for the early season that I have over you is in those sod areas and the backwaters that I'll be. And look, people, it doesn't have to be sod areas. It could be the rivers and everything like that. The advantage that I have is I can go up into 3 feet of water, 4 feet of water, where they will go up when the water's cold to warm up. So on a sunny day, I can go and just fish a ledge from 4 feet down to 6 feet, and they're going to be stacking on that ledge. Just enjoying the bait coming over, out of the shallows and the warm water flowing over them on the outgoing, which is why I love outgoing so much. But that's probably what I'm going to be forced to focus on because the water temperatures I'm hearing is 52 degrees in the back. Now, wild swings depending on where you are, but James Flynn is putting in there a day like today. Yeah, like a day like today where we had plenty of sun. There wasn't much wind, but the wind is even better. If it's windy and it's sunny and it's warm, that's even better because then you get the riffle on the top of the water and that heat exchange. But that's what I'm planning on doing.
What are you using? Are you using like gulp shrimp or?
Yeah, so when I fish, I typically start in the backwaters with a 3/4 ounce bucktail. I will almost always have on there a gulp shrimp, and then I will have a teaser ahead of it. And on that teaser, that's just a really small teaser, and I will put a jerk shad on there.
Okay.
So I'll typically start with white there and with new penny shrimp. New penny just seems to work.
New
And
penny is my absolute favorite color of all time.
yeah,
Uh, Even for like deep Montauk fishing, if we're fishing 110 feet, that and mackerel like have skyrocketed to the top for me. They just seem to always work.
yeah. Now I do get bubble gum.
Oh,
I use bubble.
I've never heard of that color.
So it literally looks like the pink bubble gum. I will use that color when nothing else is biting. And sometimes I'll throw a chartreuse, but for the most part, I'm trying to look natural or I'm using white. And white seems to work no matter what you do. But I used to be all over like nuclear chicken and those types of colors. I
Nuclear
don't use them.
chicken has disappointed me greatly the last couple of years.
Yeah.
I'm not like like a crazy believer in the colors, but it seems to me, anecdotally, that if I'm using new penny on a day, I do well.
Yeah.
Somebody in the comments mentioned blue haze.
Blue haze.
That's another good color that seems to work. And for me, glow white, because we're fishing deep, so sometimes that little bit of glow can make a difference. That's the
Yeah.
other one that I like to keep in my jar at all times.
So I would use glow white out front. I don't ever use it in the back because mostly at this time of the season. Actually, no, I don't really use it in the back at all. The reason is it seems to pick up the dogfish. And in May in New Jersey, it is like not just
You get
dogfish
the
all.
dogfish
Oh
in
my
with that
God.
shallow water fishing too?
Oh yeah, not the spiny. We get the regular smooth dogfish. And I mean, you're talking like the big ones, like the 35-inch ones. And
Yeah.
that can just be a pain in the neck. They seem to key in on glow to me. It seems that way. So I just go with the regular white. But if it's murky, I do have glow. And when the water's really dirty, I I can go to that sometimes just to see if I can get something that'll get through it. But as a standard, I don't plan to bring it. And if it's in one of my jars, then I'll use it maybe.
Yeah.
I just think keeping it as natural as possible is the best way to go. When in doubt, go natural.
Yeah. Have you ever tried so in Florida this year, we were using all these like jerk squids and sumo shrimp and all these artificials that a company called Nomad makes
Mm-hmm.
for grouper. Now, my buddy Doc, who we briefly talked about, because I said he's just as crazy in person as he shows up in the videos, he ordered a whole bunch of all those things to try as teasers for Fluke,
Yeah.
the small versions.
Yep.
And I said to him, why? They're expensive.
They are.
Not that Gulp is not expensive, but okay, Gulp is $2, not $10 for a piece, and we know it works. But I'm
Yes.
curious, and maybe some of the folks in the comments can chime in. Has anybody ever tried, either as a teaser or the main lure, just an artificial no gulp,
I
like you would for slow pitch jigging, let's say?
Yeah, I would like to see in the comments what people say. I've tried everything. And so I've tried a bunch of different types of artificial shrimp. And I can't say that any of them make it worth me paying the extra money for these lures,
Yeah,
because, gulp is a bait, right? So, and it's priced like a bait. Whereas everything else, it's like, here's this revolutionary lure. It's like, well, it's not outperforming. So why am I going to drop a $12 lure when I'm getting the same exact thing with the gulps, And gulps last forever with Fluke. They rarely bite through them. You can catch like 20 on one as long as
we have way different experiences with gulp
really
than Rich. Oh,
well.
because you're not using grubs. That's why. I okay. The grubs, when we're fishing in the summer,
Yeah.
you might go through 15 20 grubs in a session.
Huh.
The fluke absolutely bite the tails off.
I never have that unless we have the sea bass or the puffers or something like that.
So the
Um,
puffers with us will just make those little square bite marks on the
yeah,
tail. The sea bass, if you can tell the difference in hits, so the sea bass are like more like porgy hits. They're like,
yeah,
rapid fire, where the
yeah.
fluke will be just a punch or just wait on. If you don't set on those, because they don't have real teeth, they have the like little sandpaper teeth. If you don't set on that, and you don't care about catching sea bass, obviously, you'll
I hear
never
you.
have a tail ripped off. You might have
So
the gulp body pulled a little where it's
yeah,
no longer clearly on, but that you'll often, if you watch Skinner's videos, especially, he won't set when when he knows a sea bass biting. I pretty much know too when a sea bass is
yeah.
biting,
It's like
and
shot, or it's like a machine gun.
yeah, I won't set on that. That's an easy way to have your gulp tail ripped off.
So let me just give you a little bit of an insight into my psychology. I can't stand it when they're doing that. I feel like it's interfering with with what I'm doing. John, it was so bad. I was in a tournament, right? A fluke tournament. I went through over $100 in gulp just because I was so angry. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to set it hard and rip their skull out. I just wanted to punish these sea bass because I went through over $100 worth of gulp in one day because I was so irritated. But at the same time, I never felt a fluke bite the entire day.
Right, right.
So
Somebody in
yeah,
the comments just asked, I always thought it was sea bass and sea robins that eat the tails. You will lose your tails to them if you set the hook. If you
yep.
don't set the hook, they absolutely cannot break those tails.
I
Absolutely not.
I set
Neither
the
have
hook.
teeth.
I set the hook when I get irritated. That's my that is a me problem, not an everybody problem. I get so irritated and frustrated that I'll just start setting the hook, trying to hook them, just because I know it doesn't feel good for them to get hooked.
The the one fish by us, Rich, now that we've segued into this topic, that always fools me, not when you're fighting it up, you pretty much know, but on the bite itself, and maybe I'll do a visual with my hand. This is literally how they bite. Any
Okay.
idea? The skates.
I always get fooled by skates. Always.
So it feels like a fluke hit. You
Yep.
set the hook, the rod is bent with weight like a fluke,
Yep.
and you have that moment where, oh, you
Yep.
just caught a 10-pound fluke. And then about a third of the way up, when it's not fighting back, you're like, damn, I got to skate.
Yep. I always get fooled by them too, and I always set them. Yeah, I get excited too, and it used to be before I ever caught a big fluke where I knew, oh, it's just a skate. It's just a skate. But now that I know what big fluke feel like, I think, oh my God, it's a big one. And then I'm like, it's not fighting. It's not shaking. It's just kind of coasting.
Although sometimes big fluke will fool you too, because sometimes the biggest fluke I ever caught, I thought I foul hooked something. It didn't give any head shakes. It gave me one or two of those big thumps, but that was it. And I thought, no, this can't be a fluke.
Yeah.
So sometimes the big ones fight lazy. I don't know if that's the right word, but
So
they don't really have those aggressive head shakes like almost every other fluke has.
so I have a video on this channel where I was talking about where the boats were next to me. I'm in the kayak. I'm like, they're just a little too far over. Like they're 10 feet too far over. And then the next thing you know, I am like, they need to be right here. And then I pull up a 25, 26-inch fluke right there. It was the worst fight I ever had. It was
Yeah.
it was a lot of weight, but it literally didn't fight. It was it's the easiest thing ever. But then you get the 16 inchers that you don't want, and they're like shaking, and you're all excited, and you pull it up, and you're like, wow, that's not even close to a keeper. Maybe 17 incher where, you're thinking,
Yeah, sometimes those little ones are the most aggressive fighters.
it's like the striped bass.
Yeah,
They're more aggressive when they're smaller.
Agree.
You get the better fight out of them. All right, let's see. Has anyone ever tried, let me put this on, question from Vinny G. Has anyone ever tried to remelt bit off gulp back into grubs again? Have
See, I
you
thought
ever
that was
tried
a
that?
joke question because
Yeah,
I'm not even sure how you would do that unless you
you
have a
can't.
degree in chemistry.
You can't. It's impossible. It's impossible. The way that,
Your sponsor, Great Bay Outfitters, had a good question.
yeah, trying to skip through and get these. Where's his? Have you ever tried otter tail after the grub tail gets ripped off? Leave the grub body on and add the otter tail.
Yes. Well, we used to do it all the time. I don't know why we don't do it anymore. It's kind of stupid because those don't come off with anything. The the other thing that I've tried, again, harking back to Roger, he makes the metal spinners, which you can, after the tail on the grub gets bit off, you can literally screw in the spinners. And he's done great with them. I've not done as well, albeit in a very limited sample.
Right.
And of course, the one big thing is what happens if the fish takes the whole gulp and you've introduced a metal substance into that fish. I that's why Skinner won't try them, because I had that conversation when Skinner saw me using them one time, and that was his big concern. I'm not sure if they would just digest it out. It's not that big, but
You would think so,
yeah,
but they're also, I don't know. It's just the same. Like, you don't want to leave a hook in anything.
yeah,
Because yes,
exactly.
it could come out, but it could also get stuck.
Yeah,
And then it kills them. I haven't thought. Yeah. So you're talking where you just twist it on.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But back to the otter tails, we used them very successfully for years. I don't know why we abandoned them. I don't have a good reason why.
I've never used otter tails really. I mean, I've used them, but I've never used them as like a strategy.
To be clear, we didn't use them. They were to, once the tail got ripped, you could then add them to the hook on either the bucktail or the teaser, and it would emulate that wavy tail
Right.
action of the grub, and you would still have the scent theoretically from the main body
Right.
of the gulp grub.
Well, hell, I can't tell you how many containers of just bodies I have. You know what? I'm going to do that. I'll go out and buy some otter
It
tail.
definitely 100% worked. That
Yeah.
if you go back into like the Skinner archives from 2017 or 18, you'll see them being used to great success. I also have clients from Jersey who absolutely refused to rechange their gulps this year, and they said in all their testing in Jersey, it made no difference if the grub had a tail or it didn't have a tail, they would still catch fluke. And they did it with me, and it was like 50-50 the fish they were catching on full grubs or the
Really?
cut grubs. And then Skinner was running short on gulp, and he wasn't changing them. He had a video out last year about this, and he was catching fluke, a keeper fluke, just with the chopped grubs. So
So
who
that
knows?
has to go to the quality of the bucktail and the design of the bucktail then, right? Because it's got to be the movement, right? You're still getting the movement, you're just not getting the tail movement.
Right. Or the action that the angler's imparting on that bucktail. And,
Right.
Skinner has that exaggerated
Yeah.
technique where, he's violently vibrating that rod tip and really causing that bait down there to flutter.
Right.
So maybe it's less important if that's the style you're using. I don't know.
That's interesting. See, I don't do that. It's too much for me. I don't have the forearms for the Skinner Skinner technique. I will do it every once in a while, but I can't do it all day like him. I'm watching his videos. I'm like, I don't get it. I can't do it.
Yeah. So we have a theory about that technique. That technique definitely seems to catch more fluke, but it seems like bigger fluke, meaning like double digit fluke. Like the person I know who has the most double digit fluke is Doc.
Yeah.
And Doc uses the softest tip rods, and we call it the blind man. He doesn't even go up and down. He just looks like a blind man with a cane.
Just moving around.
And we are sure there's no real action on that bucktail deep. And the story we've always been told is that the big fluke are lazy predators. They hide behind rocks. They're buried in the sand if you're not in a rocky area. And they're waiting for the easiest prey to swim over them, and they ambush it.
I mean, it makes sense, right?
And would you rather hit something that's going, all spastic, or would you something that's just lazily, in a straight line coming right over you? Is that what you're going to hit?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point when you think about the biology. You know, the larger fluke, they need more calories to stay alive, so they don't want to be chasing, the same size small things around. So if something big comes over nice and lazy, I could see that. I could see that being true. I don't know if it is, but it does make sense if you think about it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, again, the amount of fluke I've seen Skinner catch in, this is the 10th year I'm fishing with him. Quantity, yes. Sometimes big fish.
Yeah.
I know a couple people that probably have done better in terms of more big fish, but nowhere near the quantity or necessarily the quality, because he does get quality,
Yeah.
and he's had quite a few double digits, but for the amount of time on the water, certainly way less than Doc, and Doc has over 10. It raises the question, maybe if you're in a tournament and you're really trying to get that 10-pounder, you know, maybe dragging the bottom is the way to go.
Yeah. And here I am with 0 10-pounders.
Well, I only
Yeah.
have
I got
one,
work.
so
I got work to do. I got to catch up. Yeah. Sorry, my computer's trying to reload this browser for some reason.
ah,
Yeah, but that would not be good. That would not be good at all.
no.
Um,
And Joseph Kiley said Skinner probably now sponsored by Gulp. There goes the otter tail. He was not ever sponsored by Gulp. I promise you, he's not sponsored by Gulp. He buys Gulp like the rest of us. Although I think occasionally, like with the orange Gulp, they will, if there's some color that they want out, they might send
they'll
him a
send
few
it to him.
packs. But otherwise, just like us, he's buying them. He does not get them for free. I promise, I swear on anything holy, that is a misnomer.
Yeah, I
Just
know
like
that.
Accurus, for the thousands and thousands, if not tens of thousands of Accurus reels he sold, for them. And yeah, he includes an affiliate link, and he'll get 1 to 9%. I think sports stuff is maybe 2 or 3% off
Yep.
Amazon. He's never once gotten a penny from Quantum for that. So
Yeah, it's
uh,
amazing to me. I mean, he is a very big part of both of those, and he's not. He's not. I don't know. They if they were smart, they would have leveraged that.
well,
You
we'll
know.
we'll see what happens, because I would have thought it would have been out by now, but there is some news coming out with Dark Matter
Okay.
and a competitor to Accurist. That's going to
Okay.
be a sturdier, better built version of that reel, which really has become a disposable reel.
Yes.
I'm
Yes.
just sick of buying them. They last one season, and I got reached out to by Pissy Fun, which is a Chinese company,
Yes.
but I've been using their reels for years now. I
Uh-huh.
bought them on my own. I just got two more in that I paid for.
Yeah.
They don't break, and they have more power, and they're cheaper, and
They don't have the good. They don't have as good of a release though.
so they have. If you get the 300 size, there's a button that you press and it pops it up, so you can
Yeah.
do it one handed.
Right. Right.
It's a little weird, but it's not as simple as the Acris, where you just let go of the thumb bar. So you hit the thumb bar down, the line goes down, and then you just move your thumb, I don't know, a half inch to the right, and hit a
Yeah.
button there, and it engages the clutch again. So you don't have to take your other hand and engage the clutch that way.
Yeah, and that's big. I'll tell you what, with my Accurus, I spend every year, twice a year, I have to take it apart and do some major like oiling, greasing, cleaning, and everything of it, because it just stops working. It just doesn't work right. I mean, it's overused, definitely, but
Yeah.
yeah, I would love to see another brand come out with something that's a direct competitor to it. Here's a question from Carl. You like using Gulp better than meat strips, and why?
Yeah. I that for me or you, Rich? I'm happy to answer.
Well, I think we both should answer this one.
Okay, I'll go first. So I used meat for years, and I even when before I knew Skinner, I would use meat. And in his last book, Skinner talks about how when he met us, you know, we brought Gulp, but he could tell we had brought bait too, and we were really fishing the bait.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd seen all the videos, and I think in our brain it was just like, well, where he's fishing, you know, there's so many fluke that you can catch them on either.
Right.
But then we saw firsthand how they outfished, you know, the spearing and squid that we historically used. And at the time they were a lot more durable. And I think also we had a lot less sea bass and interference fish than we do now. And we slowly adapted. And I can't imagine going back, although once in a blue moon, just to see if something else will work, I will try squid. I haven't really bought spearing unless clients have asked me to bring it. I will bring it if they ask. Because again, the spearing, the amount of interference fish we have between the sea bass and the sea robins and dogfish and everything else, it's just a recipe for losing your bait. But that's the reason I switched. I saw firsthand how more effective the gulp was. And just a really funny story, 2017, I had known my friend Rick. He's got that big aluminum boat, the Blue Jay. Skinner fishes on it a lot. I fish on it quite a bit too, my videos. He pulled up next to us in Montauk. We were on my old boat. It was me, Skinner, Doc, and John Sweeney. And Rick pulled up next to us. He saw us out there, and he knew me. He didn't know the other guys. And he was with a friend of his, and he said, "How many fish do you guys have?" And we're like, "Oh, we're limited." And they're like, "No, you're not." And well, how many do you have? We have one. And at that moment, we bring up another keeper, and we release it right in front of him. And he couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
And they're using squid and spearing. And he invited us on his boat the next week. And that was the first time Skinner ever fished with him. And when he saw what we were doing, and he had brought a lot of live bait on that trip, he literally brought baby bunker, his son threw a cast net and got all this great live bait that they kept alive. And it did not do crap against the gulp. And he switched then, and he hasn't looked back. So again, it's just from our personal. That's a long-winded way, Carl, of saying personal experience.
Yeah. So for me, the meat strips I don't use for a couple of reasons. First, I'm on a kayak. I don't want to bring anything frozen because it will be ruined whether I use it or not that day. You know, you can only keep things so cold on a kayak. And I'll fish for, 10, 12 hours at a time. So for that, I'm not using meat strips unless it's fresh and I decide to cut something up that I catch as bycatch. But if I'm fishing a tournament, I do always bring minnows. And I have great success with minnows. And the best fish I've ever entered into tournaments have been on those. And not necessarily those, also live spot. I will fish up spot and then I will put them onto a different hook for a tournament. I don't do that unless I'm fishing a tournament though. But I definitely catch more fish on the gulp. It's just something in my head that tells me get minnows, bring minnows, and I'll tow them around with me all day and I'll use them. And, I don't necessarily start with them though. Like I said earlier, I always start with the gulp shrimp and then with the jerk shad up top, but I will from time to time put it on. But I don't know. I meat strips, I just don't do. To me, it's just an invitation for skates. And I just don't want to have that floating around in a kayak with me. It's just not my thing.
That's why we stopped for the most part. We still do, but for the most part, we've stopped using like sea robin strips, bluefish strips, which was a big deal at one point.
Yes.
The amount of that was like the biggest dogfish attractor on earth. If you drop a bluefish strip, which everybody swears will catch big fluke,
it will.
It will catch big dogfish too. And it'll cause more havoc on the boat than Yeah,
and once it's like tog fishing. Once you get on the dogfish, and mostly spiny dogfish in that case, but once you get them and they're interested, you're done. You may as well just move because they don't move around by themselves. It's not like a brown shark showing up all by itself. You get one brown shark, you get one dogfish, there's 34 other ones just waiting down there. So I just don't like that. I just don't like that. I prefer artificials whenever possible, but I will bring live bait as a backup for a tournament and have that available. But I won't go out of my way for it either. So as an example, I like fishing behind 7 Mile Island in South Jersey. So that's Avalon and Stone Harbor. There's no bait shops left. There's none. And the one that claims to be a bait shop, I argue isn't. It's really a sandwich shop. I don't even think they have minnows. So I'm not going to stop somewhere and cart them, 50 miles on the way to the water. If it's not easy, I'm not doing it. And I don't feel like I'm missing anything when I hit the water. As long as I have enough gulp to get through the day, I feel good. Yeah, that's kind of where I come down on it. All right, let's see the next one. We're gonna close this up pretty soon. I'll just do this one real quick. Circle or J hook when using spot for bait. If I'm using spot, it's typically in a tournament, and it's only in tournaments where I can have a second rod and I fish it on a circle hook. So that's my answer. I would not put it on a J hook just because I don't have it in my hands and I don't want to gut hook any fish, especially a fluke. So that's my answer for that. You can use both, but I'm a big fan of circle hooks. I have been for decades. Before they were a thing, they were one of my things. So even for striped bass. Let's see. Tide determines what they're hitting. Okay. While it's great that you state gulp might be the better bait, I still feel that tide determines what they're hitting. I would say to some extent it does, but you have to think why would tide impact what they're biting? Now, for John, I'm going to say it's different. The tide necessarily won't matter because you're not in the backwaters, and the same bait that's going through at the outgoing is the same bait coming through at the incoming, right?
Well, I wonder if Bob's talking about Shinnecock. I know Bob, who's Robert Storms.
Okay.
I see him on the water all the time in Peconic Bay, but I know he fishes a lot of different areas. I definitely agree with what you said, though, Rich, for Montauk and some of the other areas. I'm not sure it makes a difference, but I would imagine for shallow water it makes a big difference.
Okay, he's saying Shinnecock. For me, it's a big difference. If it's outgoing, I like crabs. I like shrimp. I like the things that are coming off the sod banks into those backwater areas. If it's incoming, I'm typically fishing a fish pattern. So that's where I'm using jerk baits more often than I'm using, even grubs. To me, that's an outgoing bait. I'm typically using, something that looks like a mullet or something like that on the incoming because that's typically what's coming in at that time. So I can see that. Is there anything that we're missing on this?
No, I like this format. It was nice.
It's much easier.
It's much easier just shooting the shiitake about fishing and not necessarily worried about educating, which as I mentioned in our pre-game little chat is not something I'm comfortable doing for Fluke. I'm much more comfortable doing that with light tackle tog fishing.
Right. Yeah, I looked at this, and for everyone, so John and I talked, and we were looking at this as more of, hey, the season's about to get going. People are going to be hitting the water specifically for Fluke, and I know a lot of you. I mean, I got multiple texts just came in 2 minutes ago from somebody who's not even watching, or at least I haven't seen in the comments, just saying that they are getting their stuff ready for next week. So I am too. I'm excited. I have my battery on the charger in the garage for the kayak, for the fish finder that barely even works, but I'm bringing it anyway. I've got there you go. In the closet behind me, behind those curtains, I have I got all of my bucktails in there right now because I was messing around with them a couple nights ago. I got done doing some work for a client and I just pulled them out and I started, packing them up for next Monday. So I'm excited. Hopefully everybody is getting excited about whether it's Fluke or not, just the opening of better weather coming soon, better temperatures, more enjoyable times on the water. You'll get out with friends that are now going to be more comfortable taking time off to hit the water. It's tough to sometimes get people to go out in the spring, but 'tis the season, my people. This is when we're all going to be on the water, seeing each other and having fun. So thank you very much, John, for coming on. I appreciate it. Thank you for
having me. Always fun, Rich.
Yeah, I had a good time. Hopefully everybody else did. Everyone, again, continue to send me pictures. I did get a couple pictures of the black drum that were caught last week. So glad to see some people pulling in some of the drum. It's time. Well, By the next time that we talk, I will just be getting off the water next week, and we're probably just going to do a recap of opening day Fluke in New Jersey and New York. And so hopefully we can get some participation. Everybody, until then, get out there, get on the water, and get some tight lines.